This conference will now be recorded.
Hello, everybody. Jordan Girth here from the National Weather Service Office of Observations. Thank you so much for joining us for today's Satellite Book Club Seminar Series, session number 83. The presentation title today is TOWR-S RPM version 22 update. So if you're looking forward to learning what's in the next version of the RPM for AWIPS that brings satellite products to the field offices, you're in the right place. Our presenters from the TOWR-S team, John Evans and Lee Byerle, and our facilitator for the Q&A after the presentation will be Caitlin Rutt, meteorologist at the Weather Service Forecast Office in Amarillo, Texas, and former satellite liaison. A few reminders before we get started. As you just heard, the session is being recorded. There will be an opportunity for questions and answers after the presentation, particularly interested in Q&A from the field. So if you're at a forecast office or regional headquarters, please feel free to put your questions in the chat and we'll field them there. We also encourage you to sign in with your full name or specify your full name when asking a question in the chat. That will help us use the NOAA people locator to follow up with you if we don't get a chance to address your question or cannot address it fully. We're always looking for future presenters for this Satellite Book Club. So if you have an application you'd like to share with your colleagues, please get in touch with us. And if you're looking for training materials, Brian Mott at the Office of the Chief Learning Officer can help with that. I'd like to thank our TOWR-S team who actually, in addition to giving today's presentation, supports the Satellite Book Club, particularly Kashad Bowman, the Office of the Chief Learning Officer, and goes on a JPSS program for their support. I'd also like to note that we are counting down to the GOES-T launch. It's currently 26 days, 4 hours, 34 minutes until GOES-T launches from Cape Canaveral Air Force Station in Florida. That 2-hour launch window opens at 4:38 p.m. EST. I hope you are planning on watching the launch virtually. Provide more information at future satellite book clubs. Without further ado, I'd like to bring on John Evans, who supports the NWS Office of Observations to streamline forecaster access to satellite data products. He previously worked with the Joint Polar Satellite System and has led numerous projects with NASA, NOAA, and others, emphasizing open, scalable, interoperable data systems. Lee Byerle, his co-presenter, joined the TOWR-S team in 2015, where he supports the GOES-R program and the Weather Service Office of Observations in the transition of new satellite capabilities to operations. Also supports the AWIPS Program Office in the National Centers AWIPS Transition Project. Appreciate all the work you do behind the scenes for us, John and Lee. Welcome back to the Satellite Book Club.
Thank you, Jordan. All right, so we have too many slides for the time available, so I will waste no time on this title slide. You've been reading it for a few minutes. This is how we deploy satellite products in a somewhat agile way. We'll describe first, as seen here, what an RPM is and isn't, and then we'll review the contents of this particular TOWR-S RPM version 22, how to install it, and then some steps to verify the installation. Your next slide, slide 3, is we've shown this. It's been a little while since we've released one of these RPMs. This one was a little bit long in preparation, but it's finally here. An RPM is a Red Hat package manager. It's basically a bundle of files that a way of bundling files to deploy them. In this case, configuration files for AWIPS. The idea is to increase the agility of the AWIPS system, streamline deployment of new capabilities ahead of the somewhat less frequent AWIPS baseline releases, and then these enter a kind of a pipeline to make their way into the AWIPS baseline a few months down the road. The content of the TOWR-S RPM, this one and others, is based largely on input from the user community, from various evaluators of satellite data products, and increasingly, I would say, from presentations and the follow-on discussions from these Satellite Book Club seminars. So
and
these
the TOWR-S
interactions with the user community.
So, sorry about that. I was going to continue that thought with the TOWR-S RPMs and how they get out to the field and at the front end as the support staff, the ITOs and the SUs that help us do some early checkouts not only of the display, but of the data flow. And we wouldn't be ready to go at this point today without the help of several offices listed here, not only installing the updated RPM files, but helping us with the instructions. A lot of sites have gone to IDM user across the board. And so a lot of refinement to the instructions and steps. And so many thanks to the offices listed here. I'm probably going to miss people, but mention some names. Annette Mokri looking over the instructions, Mike Davis at Nashville doing the install, Greg Lewis and Frank Alsheimer at Columbia taking a look yesterday, and good feedback from Steve Zubrick, who walked through the steps yesterday at Sterling. But again, I'm going to miss if I keep trying to go through everyone. But thank you for the 4 CONUS regions for taking a look at these instructions, getting things going, giving feedback. You know, in addition to them, there are a number of offices and support staff that help us to get the data staged, tested, flowing out over to sites, whether it be subscriptions to PDA and so forth. So those are behind the scenes aspects that we just want to acknowledge here in the bottom part of the slide here.
Right. It's a real effective team effort that goes on behind these RPMs, testing and checking them out, and verifying and editing the installation instructions and so on. So it's been good. Thank you for all who've contributed. The next slide tries to explain what is in a typical RPM. Some of you may be already very familiar with this, but it seems worth clarifying what goes into these. We're not modifying the AWIPS code itself, but rather taking advantage of the very high degree of configurability that AWIPS provides. So a number of configuration files, often in XML format, are included in these RPMs for configuring the ingest process in EDEX, or the display of various products in the CAVE visual environment, plugin configurations, and so on. And these affect changes they're basically site level preferences that are affected. These override but don't change the baseline configurations. So there's a fair bit of flexibility to install and uninstall these configurations. And then it's worth pointing out is in the third bullet here that we design these RPMs to be cumulative. So if you have version 22, it includes everything that was in version 21. So if you happen to skip the last one, well, install this one, and you should get all the goodies that were available previously. In some cases, an RPM, and we'll get into this in a few slides, may remove some content that was previously in RPMs but is now part of the baseline, doesn't need to be in an RPM. So that's what's in an RPM in general. Now let's turn to this specific version 22 RPM on the next slide and start looking at what's in this particular RPM. So first off, we have a couple of pointers to support for slight changes in data products that are coming down the pike in a couple months' time. One of these is a very, I would say, a minute change to the polar blended hydro product suite, the total precipitable water and a couple of others. It really is, this will not be a visible change for users. It really is sort of a metadata field that's changing from uppercase to lowercase, or the other way around, I can't remember. But it requires this RPM to kind of smoothly transition from the current legacy product to this slightly different, slightly more standards compliant product that's coming soon. The next slide, slide 6, similarly is describing a change expected in mid-March to the vertical moisture and temperature profiles. These will be switching from the current 101 pressure vertical level product to a reduced, thinned version of that with only 34 carefully chosen pressure levels. And there's a slight change in, I believe, the dataset name. And so that's going to require installing the RPM to kind of transition smoothly from what is currently being sent on SBN to what will start being sent on SBN as of mid-March. So install the RPM will facilitate a smooth transition from what's currently available to what will become available after the mid-March timeframe. So we're hoping that a majority of sites will be able to install the RPM in the first few weeks after we roll it out in very shortly. The next slide here it gets into a number of changes to how these products are displayed. So there's no change in the data support, but just improvements in how these data products are displayed in the AWIPS CAVE environment, including in particular the inclusion of the sector detail in the legend when you're displaying these imagery and channel differences products. Slide 8.
We've had this capability with the RGBs in the past, the red, green, blue products. This adds this capability for the imagery. And what it does is has no impact on any kind of procedures or perspectives that you might have out there, that you wouldn't have to resave them for this type of capability. It's basically compatible with any of the procedures out there now. It makes it easier if you have several different types of sectors of the same product going. You can see which sectors you're looking at in the legend as well. So.
Thank you. Slide 8 is an exciting way of displaying different products that are currently available. We'll hear more about that next week. Bill Lyon's presentation will focus on this, but in a nutshell, as I understand it, we'll find out more. We're overlaying a red, green, blue color composite of imagery, overlaying that over the actual grid of numbers from various level 2 derived products. And so we can not only see colors, visual differentiation, but also be able to look at the numbers behind those colors. So more on that next week. Let's see, slide 9. Next slide is another red, green, blue color composite showing the cloud type RGB. So that's a result of some work by Andy Heidinger and Scott Lindstrom. So thanks for that work. Let's see, slide 10 is a product that's been available for some time, but it had we're proposing a different way of displaying this, where the areas where a turbulence probability value is less than 5%, we basically make that transparent. It was previously white, so it was a little harder to overlay with other layers of other products. So thanks to Derek and a team of folks that went through and discussed this in some detail back a few months ago to arrive at what's in the RPM now.
Thank you, John. Just wanted to add in here the technical group that was meeting last spring. We're working to get those groups back together with support from the developer. And we were working on the turbulence problem with several CWSUs participating and looking at best ways to apply this product here from SIMS. And so we appreciate that continued ongoing exchange led by Sean Campbell and with the help of the developers there, Tony Wimmers, and we're continuing to look at ways to refine this. So yeah, this is one intermediate step to refine this color enhancement. So that's there in the menu under the derived products under CONUS. And so it continues to flow out of the regional LDM. And we'll get a little bit more into the data flow sources here in a little bit.
Mm-hmm. All right, next slide. Slide 11 shows an enhanced display of the GOES-R land surface temperature product that previously kind of went black or transparent for values under, I believe it was minus 10 Fahrenheit. So now it is able to display meaningfully much colder temperatures. You see a little sample here, minus 36. So that, and we'll continue to work with that to make sure that the color map makes sense for a wide range of, full range of temperatures. The next slide is illustrates some of the additional ways of displaying the gridded new caps data product. Precipitable water and temperature are now in degrees, in units that are in more common use. And this Haynes index, previously just a single layer Haynes index, is now available as a 3-level view. So thanks to the folks in Huntsville for work on that. Slide 13 this is actually this new color map category, the 25 to 33 knot category for ASCAT winds. That was previously available in, was it version 20, but then inadvertently got omitted from version 21, and it's back. And this corresponds to the kind of advisory, wind-related advisory threshold. So this is really a better way to display this. And last but not least on this list, slide 14, is a little bit of a niche product here. Some red, green, blue color composites highlighting rocket plumes and GOES-R imagery. So here you see a couple of examples of rocket plumes that were viewed in, I believe it was meso imagery. So this is kind of tucked in in the local menu buttons, but you can find it there if you're interested in this. So we're hoping to hear more on that sometime in the coming weeks in one of these satellite book clubs, still to be scheduled. So stay tuned on that. So slide 15 details some of the things that have been removed as part of, that will be removed as part of installing the RPM v22. Most of these are capabilities, features that are now in the AWIPS baseline, the 20.2, whatever it is. So a number of RGB color composites and derived products, some color maps, derived parameter definitions. These, it's interesting, the polar blended hydro configurations are baseline, but now there's this slight change we saw a bit earlier. So we're going to retain these EDEX ingest configurations to make sure that that continues to go into, get ingested correctly. And then we're also removing this derived motion winds combo menu button and removing the geographic filter on derived motion winds.
Yeah, hey, John, I just had a real quick comment there as we look at this one. The geographic filter is an important one if you're been involved with the satellite configuration side. So it's really more a lot of the folks that do the configuration, and this has been an important input from offices to leave certain things alone, because we like, you know, I'm speaking as a field officer, we like to filter the data the way we want it filtered. So this is one of those cases where we want to work to make sure we're not putting things out there that are taking you know, overriding customizations that are preferred already. So we have lots of specific steps in our update procedure about this particular one here at the bottom about the geographic filtering. So I just wanted to add that in there.
Yeah, okay, so the next slide, 16, lists the configurations that have been retained from the previous RPM. We'll go through them in great detail. We'll post these slides, right, Kashad, so people can click through and go through these in more detail at their leisure. This is a quick indication of the configurations that are still in the RPM from the previous one, and in blue, the data paths that they follow to get to AWIPS operational sites, whether SBN or the regional LDM, or in some cases near the end, data delivery, AWIPS data delivery. So
yeah, oh, sorry, John, go ahead.
Yep, no, finish up.
I was just going to say, this is what we're looking at. Here's a combination of items that deal with whether or not the data flow is hardened and completely off the migration path, say over the LDM, or the configurations themselves are sitting in the baseline now. So it's kind of a combination and mix of a lot of these. And so we list here, some are right in the process of going into a 21.x baseline. And so they're still sitting in our configurations, like fog and low stratus. You know, WITH was on the SBN like a long time ago. Why is it in the RPM? So some of this is like a graduated flow out of the RPM, which we mentioned in the earlier part of the presentation. But lots of information here. Please let us know if you have questions. I know the fourth one down is could be, or the, let's see, the Sierra geocolor listed there. That's still in work and in progress, and we're making progress with getting that data flow and processing available for everyone. We retain all the configurations there, especially for sites that are doing some early eval of this product, but we're still working on a later, wider rollout of the data flow itself. So wanted to highlight that one there.
Thank you. The next slide indicates the links you can follow for installing this RPM. As indicated here, this will be available, putting some little T-crossing, I-dotting, finishing touches on it. It should be available for wider deployment next Tuesday, February 8th. And you can go to these URLs indicated here for installation instruction, uninstallation, and then installation. We often in the past have included instructions in a site preparation guide, but we're kind of reviewing how best to do that. And so for now, we're not looking at any new site prep guide changes for this RPM v22. What you'll see there, if you do go to that link, is some instructions for previous updates. And on the next slide, once you have installed it, here's how you can verify that you really have installed it. The installation goes usually pretty quickly, so it's like, did this take? How did we do? So you can go to that link to find out some details on what to check, and in particular, some of the things we were just looking at earlier. Make sure that the legends look correct with the sector displayed, as we saw earlier, this ECONUS or whatever sector, and the goes east 5-minute VLM flash extend density. Make sure that that's still coming in. And then, for example, and there's other things you could check as well, but the index should show 3 layers if in fact the installation worked as it should. Please, as always, reach out to the TOWR-S team, myself or others, for any assistance you may need as you go through these steps and verify them. And there's some additional configurations on the next slide that you may wish to look at. We've always had kind of these additional things you can choose to do. There again is the URL for the installation instructions. And the last slide, for further information or assistance, you can contact myself or Lee, or join the TOWR-S room on NWS chat. Lee, did we cover everything?
I believe so, John. Thank you. And I didn't have anything further to add at this point.
Okay.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Lee and John, for that presentation. It was really good. I would like to encourage all attendees to stay on for discussion and potentially to ask some questions. We also encourage participation from the field forecast offices and regional headquarters. But please remember to specify your full name in the chat when you are asking a question so we can refer it to you. Also, there will be a survey put in the chat. Please go back and complete that feedback survey. That would be very helpful for them. I also want to mention that in a week from today, on Thursday, February 10th, this is an hour earlier than normal, so at 11 a.m. Eastern, we'll have Bill Line, the physical scientist from NESDAR STAR, who will discuss GOES RGB and derived product readout enhancements. So please join us next week for that. I also want to encourage attendees to contact the TOWR-S team. So that would be Lee Byerle, presented today, and Kashad Bowman for any questions about the Satellite Book Club or for configuration of satellite products and anything additional when it comes to that. So again, please submit any questions that you have into the chat room, or indicate in the chat room if you would like to ask a question verbally. But we'll dive right into the questions, and I'll start out with the first one. So basically, my question is, you had some interesting new menu items in there with this release. And you showed a lot of links to some great quick guides. But can you share this presentation so that everyone else would have access to the links? I know I would prefer that, and I'm sure some field offices would.
Yes, that's definitely the intention, Lee. We're putting a link on VLab, I believe, or Kashad may have more detail on that.
Thank you. Yeah, that's right, John. A good question. So as a lot of the audience knows, we get the slides recordings out there in the VLab or in the YouTube, but in this case, and as often as we can, we're putting the slides along with the link there in VLab so you can get the slides directly. There are some backup items in the slides as well you might be able to find helpful, as well as links over to the instructions and some additional information like, say GO's legacy menu items, why are they still there, that sort of thing. One of the things this brings up the opportunity to add, though, is with so much material in this presentation, links and quick guides and references back to previous talks, I'd like to put a plug in for some efforts we're doing with the cloud AWIPS in the near future, and stay tuned, which we want to do some concerted collaboration on some of these new capabilities, say, the sounding products, the VEERs, or some of the other new capabilities you've seen here. So stay tuned for some outreach from us where we can bring together some of the champions or developers from the development side, or maybe users that are applying these operationally. And we're going to have some concerted efforts with some sessions with using the cloud AWIPS, where we can go over some of these capabilities a little bit more. So that's back to you, Caitlin.
Yeah, no, that's very helpful. I know that as a field office, that would be something very useful for us to kind of learn what's going into this new RPM. I know that you mentioned this earlier, but I just want to clarify for those listening that are in field offices that do have procedures already created. So I know you mentioned that there would be extra information included in the legend for the satellite products, so like the ECONUS and stuff like that. But I think you mentioned that the sites wouldn't have to redo their AWIPS procedures on this change, but I just want to clarify that because I'm sure that there's a lot of people out there with procedures.
Thanks. Yeah, that's a good point. Anytime there's something new coming out there, does that mess up the procedures or the perspectives? For the legend items, those are picked up immediately in a style rules configuration file, and we've tested this thoroughly with and without the change, and so there's no impact on any existing procedure for that particular change. Yeah, appreciate that question. Oh, and by the way, more information on this RPM outcoming availability next week, since it's critical weather this week. We're going to be putting that out in some additional messaging next week. So if you lose any details or you're wondering when you might be getting at your site, stay tuned for some information early next week on the 8th. We'll be sending out more details.
Awesome. Thank you, Lee. We did get a question in from Bill Line. He asked, can you update on the progress towards data access via the cloud in AWIPS? So, for example, satellite, etc.
That's a big question. Lee just mentioned using AWIPS itself in the cloud as a way of collaborating, but I think this is more data being produced and or disseminated via the cloud. Lee, you're pretty close to some efforts with Joe Zadrick and others towards streamlining that. Do you want to say more?
Yeah, just a few brief words with some of the activity. This is not related to the RPM configuration per se, but it's more of having access to the data as really complements of the SBN feeds that we're able to get through these instances already. But there are new ways being looked at for GOES 18 readiness, in which the cloud provides an opportunity to have supplemental data pools. And so there's more to come on that. I don't have, I can't provide too many details now, but that will provide some more flexible ways using secure COM to access data in the cloud. And it's going to actually assist with the PLT period, the post-launch testing period for GOES 18, to be able to provide that additional data to the Pacific when both GOES 17 and GOES 18 are up and out during pre-operational testing. The cloud provides an opportunity to check that out.
Awesome. Thank you, Lee, for that. I'm not seeing any other questions coming in. So at this point, if you have any other questions, I'm sure you can reach out to Lee and John. Both, they have a slide in there, so when they share the slides, you can contact them with any further questions. And it sounds like we'll be getting some more information next week. So again, thank you, Lee and John. And thank you everyone who attended. And I will now pass it back to Jordan for final remarks.
All right, thank you so much, Caitlin. Maybe I'll just give one question to our audience here, since we have everybody from the TOWR-S team on the call. Is there anything that you would like to see in AWIPS or anything that could be improved in the existing RPM? Obviously, we probably can't get it in there for the TOWR-S RPM version 22, but we are very interested if there's anything that you think could be improved. Even if it's a fleeting idea, we would love to hear from you. So maybe I'll just pause for 30 seconds. Maybe Lee or John, if you've heard anything that you're thinking about or you've heard from the field with regards to possible enhancements, feel free to contribute those.
I'll just mention one thing is the consistent inputs for thematic. AWIPS tends to silo off a lot of data products sometimes, and there's feedback on thematic types of menu items, and so there's one step closer to that, and some of the local options items you'll see this time, and so we hope to work toward more of that sort of thing based on input from everyone. There'll be a little bit more about that next week when Bill Line presents on some of the RGB with a derived product readout combinations that are possible to make management and focus on mission themes a little more flexible.
Okay, sounds good. Well, I'm not seeing anything come in, so I guess that means you're doing a pretty good job then, capturing the needs, and we certainly really appreciate that. And I know you do a lot of outreach with the field. Looks like Dan Miller's got a question he wants to ask verbally. Of course, Dan.
Can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Just wasn't sure if that was working or not. Hey, this isn't necessarily related to RPMs or satellite data in AWIPS, and I certainly don't want to speak for everybody where their primary satellite goes west, but to be bluntly honest, with the continued degradation of the ABI on goes west, goes T launch and getting that thing in place is becoming more important than any new RPM at this point. And I see that the launch just slipped another couple of weeks again to March 1st. Do you guys have any inside information or update on if that's going to continue to slide or what's going on with that and what we can expect for a schedule out west?
Sure, we have a lot of information about that. I don't know if we can quickly find the slide with the GOES T schedule. Maybe somebody behind the scenes can quickly locate that. But the short of it is that we're going to try to get that in place, Dan, by August 1st. So the good news is everything is looking good so far, fingers crossed, for March 1st. We are going to have a very limited testing period over the test position, which is at 89.5 west. And then we're going to work on getting that out to very near the goes west position. And then during the peak periods in August and October, we're actually going to transition goes T to a bit of a pseudo operational state. The data will still be what's considered, most likely is going to be considered provisional, but we're going to recommend it for operational use at our forecast offices, the imagery. And hopefully the issues that I know a lot of the offices out west have been experiencing will be a thing of the past. Launch comes with risks, and again, we're very success oriented in the schedule, but we certainly hope to get that capability out there for the second half of this year. And I believe there may be an important TOWR-S RPM update needed for our offices in the West, Alaska, and Pacific region because of this switching between GOES 18 and GOES 17 and GOES 18. We're going to be going kind of back and forth several times before GOES 18 is finally operational next January, and we certainly don't want the forecasters to have to update their procedures every time. So I would say stay tuned for that. I don't know, I see John looking intently. I don't know if we found a schedule yet or not.
I'm posting something shortly here.
Okay.
Hey, Jordan?
Yeah.
Yeah, Steve Goodman. I don't know if you were at the GOZAR monthly status review today, but Matt Siebold has a new slide, and it shows when things become available, and they did say that the availability of ABI has moved to the left by 2 months. So beta's earlier and provisional's earlier. You probably have that, but if you don't, there's a new slide you can get if you want to pass that on.
Okay, yeah, we were just learning about that yesterday informally. I haven't seen the slide.
Yeah, this is Joe Fiore. I was going to say that Matt presented these new slides, and I think we'll be able to share those with a wider group once it's maybe by the end of today or tomorrow. If it's I don't think they're going to change much, but yeah. So hopefully success oriented here, and the satellite will have no issues. So.
Yeah, the important thing too is that GOES 18 ABI will be available before the interleave takes place if they still need to do that. So that's really good news.
Right. So Dan, good point. We're definitely working on it, as you heard. Got a lot of folks behind the scenes, specifically over in NESDIS, to try to see what we can do. And I think we'll have to increase our outreach. Once the launch goes successful on March 1st, I think we're really going to accelerate that activity. We're going to have service change notices starting to go out, and we're going to work very closely to make sure the field is informed with everything that's going to be going on with that transition. Yeah, everybody knows GOES 18 is going to be GOES West to deal with the issues that have been experienced out there with GOES 17. And I think I can speak for everybody who's worked hard on the GOES 17 issues, that we're looking forward to delivering a satellite that meets the mission of the Weather Service with GOES 18.
Hey, Jordan, Joe, well said. One more thing I'll add. Once these slides are finalized, we're going to share them on the GOZAR website, and I'll give you guys a link to that. So.
Yeah, thanks, Joe.
Sure.
Okay, and John Evans did put a link there in the chat, which with some slides from OSPO. If you look in there on slide 6, that has the approximate schedule of everything. And again, we'll be converting that to what that means for the data on the SBN and for our OCONUS sites that have GRB antennas. We'll be working very, very closely with you this summer.
Hey, Jordan.
Okay. Oh, quick, Caitlin.
Hey, it looks like another question came in real quick, so I thought maybe we should, since Lee and John are here, it looks like Aaron Jacobs did ask a question. Are there any thoughts about getting the Cloud Snow Discriminator product working from GOES? There's a current product with VIIRS.
I don't know too much about that, Lee.
There are some capabilities now to do a lot more on-site preparedness of some of the ingredients that go into AWIPS, and that's what we're working on with the GeoColor initiative too. And so I think that's a paving the way for things just like this. And so I know we've definitely discussed it, and it's been, the intentions have been there for even the VIIRS, taking that and applying to GOES. But I would just say it's definitely something we should, there's capability there, but there's also this a paver, or sort of a trail finder with the GeoColor. So we're hopeful we can look at things like that to implement them more soon, more easily, rather than flowing traditionally more and more bands over a network. That makes it difficult. And when you're taking more and more and just sending the data over for bands that have already been provided. So it's a good question. We'll definitely take note of it.
Okay, well, appreciate all of the discussion today. Sounds like our field was wondering about GOES 18, which we'll make sure that we continue to provide you with important outreach on that. And of course, John and Lee, thank you for everything you've been doing maintaining our TOWR-S RPM. This is really assured that we're maximizing the use of satellite data in the field offices. Next week, Bill Line, physical scientist at STAR, is going to be talking about GOES, RGB, and derived product readout enhancements. I encourage you to join us, but keep in mind it is an hour earlier, so 11 a.m. Eastern time. Please join us. We'd love if you would join us. Until then, hope everybody stay well, stay warm. Hope you're not caught up in some of that winter weather over the central and eastern part of the U.S. today. And we'll see you next week. Take care, everybody.